No. Pretty Caroline, oh, 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 stone cold stunner. She was a winner.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Pro Tips. Today we are going to break down the backside snap, something that's used all the time in all different types of waves and conditions and critical to have in your repertoire. We're breaking it into 5 steps. Number 1 being eyeing off the section, 2 the bottom turn, 3 mid-face transition, 4 the pre-snap, and 5 post-snap. So the backhand snap is truly a staple to have. If you're a surfer, it's really critical to know how to do it. All the best do. As we break it into 5 steps today, what I found that works best for me is as you go surf, focus at 1 step at a time so you're not overloaded. There's a lot of information here, but try and do 1 at a time. Hope you guys enjoy it, and let's dive in. All right, guys, let's look at another one of my backhand snaps. So again, we start by always looking to where you want to go and eyeing off your section. You can see my front arm is kind of tapped into the water, and my back arm just kind of follows and guides my back shoulder. When you do your bottom turn, it's super important that you're super compressed off the bottom as you come around. So make sure both those knees are bent. And then as I come around, I'm still looking at the section I'm going to, and I'm gonna slowly unweight my knees. So you can see my knees are slightly less bent here. And that kind of weightless transition feeling is gonna help me come up to the lip. Both arms are kind of in that beach ball position, nice and wide, twisting up towards the lip, up to where I wanna go. And I'm nice and weightless. As we come into the pre-snap, as we like to call it, you can see my board is at about 1 o'clock, not quite 12. We're always aiming for straight up vertical 12. So have that in the back of your mind. But here I've turned my head. Now I'm looking back down at the bottom of the wave, which is where I'm gonna end my snap. So I've turned my head, and naturally when I turn my head, you see my shoulders have rotated, my arms and torso is looking back down, which is what's gonna help me rotate. I'm coming through kind of this post-snap zone now. And as I kick the tail and my back leg, I'm gonna slowly move my weight onto my front leg, which will help you not get too caught up at the top of the wave. You're gonna transition nice and smooth down back the face of the wave. So you can see my front knee is really bent, and all my weight there is completely on that front leg. There's not much weight on my back leg. So I've already kicked the tail, the hard work's done, and I'm leaning and compressing over that front foot. My eyes are looking down. I'm really compressed over the top of my surfboard. And that back leg's just kind of taking a ride at this point. And I'll come on down.
Okay, so here we have Lakey throwing an absolute haymaker at the lip. So starting off as usual, eyeing off the section, the steep part of the section is what we want to be hitting. Then number 2, the bottom turn. So with that leading arm or the front arm, planting it close or into the water to use as a pivot point. And then with the back arm or the trailing arm, we're using that to guide the rotation. As you can see, Lakey's board here she's engaging a lot of rail in the water, which is what we want, not too much fins or it becomes squirrely. And then looking at the section. So really controlling everything, you're not over rotating the upper body, and as you can see here, most of the rotation should generate through the hips, and it should only be a small amount. You shouldn't be over rotating or you're going to get to the top and your momentum's going to be completely off. So as you can come up here, you can see her leading arm's lifted out of the water. Her trailing arm is guiding. It's almost those beach ball arms again as you come to the top. Her eyes haven't left the steep part where she wants to hit. And through this transition phase here, she's actually unweighted through the knees. So going from the bottom turn, she's unweighted through those knees, coming up into the pre-snap phase. So through this pre-snap phase now, you'll see I'm drawing a line in the middle of the wave. Once the tail of her board gets past this line, this is where that pre-snap starts. And as you can see, she rotates the head, which is then gonna indicate and tell the rest of the body to rotate with it. So that's starting the snap here. Once the tail passes this line, she rotates the head, the hips are gonna follow, and that's gonna initiate the snap. As you can see here, this is almost going into the post-snap phase now. The knee, so the transition of weight through the board is really important. So you start in the post-snap to put more weight into the front foot, and as you come through it, you'll actually flex your knee a little bit more. As you're coming through the snap here, as you just saw, she's looking down to where she wants to go. She gets a little caught here, catches a bit of rail, but other than that, it was an amazing turn.
All right, guys, let's have a look at this snap. So as always, eyeing off the section, we've come through our bottom turn here, and what I want to focus on mostly right here is this weightless transition. So as I decompress my knees a little bit, you can see they're not as coiled, and my arms are going to be in this kind of beach ball-like position, opening up still. But that decompression is allowing me to take pressure off that inside rail, flattening up my board, and then I'll be able to press on that outside rail to then do the actual snap and maneuver. So it's a super critical part of the snap. You can see here I'm pressing on that back tail really hard as I come up to the top of the snap. My board is at probably 2 o'clock here, so room for improvement there. I'm still looking down as always. As I look down, my shoulders will follow. You can see where I'm kind of transitioning in the snap. My board's about halfway out of the water. That's a good rule. You don't want to go too much higher, otherwise you might fly out the back. And as I slowly come around this part here, this is where I transition from weight on the back leg to weight on the front leg. So it's back leg when you're going up, 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 and then as you want to do the snap and turn the board back down to the face of the wave, you want to put pressure onto that front foot, which is going to allow you to have it come around.
Okay, so here we have one of the best in the game, Connor O'Leary. So as we have been doing, eyeing off the section, number 1, bottom turn number 2, that leading arm using as a pivot point, outside arm just guiding the rotation. All the rotation should initiate through the hips, remember that. As you come through here, you unweight, so you're in that transition phase, you're starting to unweight through the knees and through the rail of the board. And this is that transition into the pre-snap. You're still sort of opening the chest up towards the lip. Where your chest face is where you're going to be going. Where you're looking is also where you're going to be going. As you come up here, so this is that pre-snap phase. So you can see once his tail gets once again past that mid-line, so mid-face line, the eye gaze is going to change. So he's going to pivot his head around, start to rotate down to where he wants to be finishing this turn, and the hips and everything else will follow where the head's going. As you can see here, he's cranked his front knee into a lot of flexion, but you'll see with his turn, he unweights and he kicks that tail out a lot. So it's into the post-snap phase, he's really quickly putting his weight into his front foot. He's kicking the back leg out to throw the tail a little bit, and then to catch and re-engage his rail, he bends the knees and plants the weight back into his board. So as you can see, he throws tail, presses back down to the board, catches the weight, and then looks back to where he wants to be doing his next turn again.
All right, guys, I want to show you a couple waves of Julian, and it's kind of 2 variations of the snap. So this one I really like. He's kind of obviously flying down the line here and eyeing off his section, and he goes up as if he's going to do this nice traditional transition backhand snap, and then he realizes he needs to get going down the line. So he kind of changes the angle of his board. You can see that last minute to more down the line, and I think that's just a really nice thing to have in your repertoire. This one is more of a wrapping type of snap. As you can see, he doesn't really blow the tail. It's more on rail and carvy, which is great to have in your repertoire as well. So let's break this one down a little bit more in depth. He's bottom turning, eyeing off the section, very similar to all the other snaps we've looked at today. The setup is really similar. He's kind of going to hit it right in that power source and pocket of the wave. As he comes around, nice transition, weightless feeling. And then here is where things change slightly. So he kind of passes that midpoint of the wave, which is where you want to turn and start pivoting and starting and initiating your snap. His eyes are looking back down and his front shoulders have turned. And as you can see, instead of blowing the tail at this part and getting those fins to release, he actually engages his rail rather than kind of getting that weightless free feeling where he'd blow the tail. He realizes all this section is getting a little bit softer, so maybe the better turn is to engage the inside rail, and therefore it's going to look a little bit more carvy. Now it's still a snap, it's not really a backhand carve, but as you can tell in the footage, it's a variation of that snap. which is nice to have. You can see the angle of his board. He changes. It's kind of going horizontal to the lip here. His front arm is kind of leading, and he just pushes through that with a nice engaged rail. Kind of more weight is evenly distributed. It's not all on his front foot. It's not all on his back foot. It's kind of evenly played through that entire snap. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that that is helpful for you. As he comes out of it too, which another just important note is you always want to be looking back down the line to where you're going.
So as you can see here, we are looking at Taj for our last backhand turn. So as you can see here, really compressing off the bottom, coming off into the top, kicking the tail a lot, and riding out really smooth. You notice here he does this with a lot of speed, which actually makes this a lot easier. As we reverse here, coming back once again into that bottom turn, you can see here he compresses a lot. Taj actually gets a little bit more upper body wind up as he comes around here. As you can see that through the transition phase, he really flattens that board out to then engage the opposite rail, and he kicks the tail a lot. So he almost slingshots himself into that section, and when it comes to kicking the tail, he has so much speed it makes it a little easier. So here we go, another example. So really compressing off the bottom, rotating that upper body a little bit more than some of the other guys, flattening the board out, and then transitioning to the opposite rail, kicking the tail out, compressing all the weight into the front foot. You see that front arm almost touches the board, which is with a lot of good backhand surfers, that happens, and then coming out.